Hey, and thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this conversation. This topic has been resonating and connecting with schools of education for about 6 or 7 months now, ever since we entered the COVID space and pandemic. And so there are lots of questions and conversations to be had around how schools of education are responding to it. Particularly, how are we as a school of education responding to it? How are we meeting the needs of our students? How are we supporting our faculty as a campus community? Because we are a professional program, and we're honored to be able to say that we're one of the few programs at the undergraduate level that you can receive a professional license for. And so that's critically important to us. And we take great pride in the services that we provide our students, and we want them to go out and become excellent teachers and continue to wear that UIndy School of Education brand. Um, I would be doing my diligence as a dean if I didn't walk you through kind of where we are as a school of education and kind of give those who are less familiar with us or at one point were familiar with us and kind of want to just get a sense of what's going on in the School of Education at UIndy. Without doing that, I think I wouldn't be serving myself well or the faculty that I serve without giving you some updates. And so I'll walk through a few slides that kind of hit on how we're looking at our School of Education and what we've got going on. And then we'll get into sort of the topical conversation of today around how we are reimagining our School of Education during this pandemic. So without further ado, I'll move to our next slide. So School of Education, University of Indianapolis, kind of future goals and directions. I sort of this diagram to kind of give you a good visual of where we see ourselves. We spent a lot of time, and Deb Sachs is here, almost a year, kind of looking at different components of our School of Education and where we saw ourselves kind of transitioning to. When you think across the country, these are not uncommon terms to have in place for a school or department, but the way you define them can be drastically different than a school of education across the street or one in another state. So when you think about our mission and values, the key word there is that we want to be a connected school of education. We want to be able to connect with our community. We want to be able to connect with our students. We want to be able to connect with the broader campus at large. We're a caring faculty group, and we want our students to know that when they graduate, that they have a responsibility to do certain things as educators in their communities, right? To be advocates for social justice, to align themselves with equity and inclusion, and to be able to teach all types of learners. The other aspect that we're critically focused on is recruitment and retention. Education once was a very well respected profession. When you go back into the early parts of the 20th century, teachers were highly valued. Somewhere along the line, we missed that mark and we started to devalue the purpose of an education. Well, I'm here to tell you that being a teacher is still one of the most important responsibilities and one of the most important professions that one can undertake. And with that, we put a real strong emphasis on recruitment and retention in our School of Education. We want to recruit high quality high school students and returning students from professions into our graduate programs to be teachers. And we also want to retain them. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we do that. And we equate that with success. When we can get high ability students into our programs and we can retain them and they can go out to be high quality teachers in school districts, we've done our job. We also want to improve our technology space. We've learned through the COVID pandemic that improving technology will be something that has really improved now, but will continue to improve later. So we're looking at our technology and how we can best prepare our teacher candidates to go out and use technology in great spaces to help teach kids. Our accreditors require us to do it, but we enjoy doing it as a School of Education. And I have a slide dedicated to kind of talking about the ways that we improve technology. Inclusion and equity. Now more than ever, the conversation around equity and inclusion and equality is coming up. Every day on the news, you hear more about a specific incident or something that's challenging our nation around being fair, put quite simply. What does it look like for people to be fair, be treated fairly across the board. What we want to be able to do is prepare our students to not look at a person by the color of their skin or disability that they may have or the way they identify by gender or sex. We want them to look at an individual for who they are and treat them equitably and fairly, and that that person has every right to be included to any safe space. And so we're working with our students to be able to do those things very well. And that's part of our mission too. Our students will leave here with those values. And the last part that hasn't changed over time is the ability for School of Education faculty and departments and schools to be able to connect strongly with K-12 schools. I have a slide dedicated to the partnerships that we have with school districts and how we engage with them. And that really focuses on the preparation part and the really unique skill sets that we provide our teacher candidates when they are being prepared in our public schools. So that's sort of an overview of how we've kind of looked at our School of Education and kind of the vision in these 5 areas. Okay. So mission and values. Again, we spent a lot of time working on our mission statement, and I'll just read it just clearly to you, and then you can kind of look at what we value. School of Education prepares transformational educators who work alongside communities to learn deeply and disrupt educational and social injustice. That's a powerful mission statement. And we're not saying that those are just words on paper. We are really going to be intentional about making sure that our students have these types of values when they leave. It's very hard work. I'm very proud that our faculty agreed on a mission that has this type of capacity to be a change agent in our society for our teachers. Just think about teachers that go out into the schools that have this social justice type of mindset, that are able to transform communities and work with kids who have disadvantages to lift them up so they can be motivated and develop to go to college and be productive in life as we all want them to be. We believe that educators practice and promote self-efficacy, creativity, and curiosity. Those are just some key tenets to what a teacher should be doing in the classroom, right? Be confident, be creative, be curious, help with your students, and help them develop those skills that they see in you. We believe that educators advocate for social justice. Again, we're really about making sure that our students leave with the knowledge of social justice, they understand it, and they can address social inequities that happen in our society. Recruitment and retention. I think it's best that I start out just playing a numbers game with you and just kind of showing you from an enrollment standpoint where we are as a School of Education. When I report to people above me, this is the number one question, right? Because it's a budgetary item. It's an item that comes up in terms of your sustainability and your product. So how many students are in the School of Education? Total number of students in our school is 290. Now, if you look up towards this top part here, in our elementary and secondary education programs, we have a total of 244 students. All right, our elementary education program, that is our largest program in the School of Education. We have 134 students. Secondary education, 75 students, and those students are in content areas. So if you want to be a history teacher, you would be in the history department and you would take the secondary education courses as a co-major. So we have 75 students that we sort of share with other departments: English, history, arts, math, and those kinds of areas. Foreign languages are some of the areas that we relate to, and you're able to receive a content license, right? In our graduate programs, we are growing in those areas. We have school leadership programs, we have special education graduate programs, we have an MAT program. Those are individuals who have a bachelor's degree who have decided to come back to the profession to teach. So that's our MAT program. We also have a Teach STEM program, and I see that our faculty member Deb Sachs is here, and she runs that program quite well. That is a fully funded program for science, math, and engineering teachers. So if you were interested in that particular program, you would have come in with a full clinical experience, full paid tuition in certain subject areas related to the sciences. And so Deb Sachs has done a wonderful job over the years running that program, and we've been able to produce a critical need area in STEM fields of teachers. So we're very proud of our accomplishments in the Teach STEM education area. Okay. All right, so I talked a little bit about improving technology. Right now, our teacher candidates are going through an Apple certification at the undergraduate level. We're piloting this certification because we feel that it is necessary that our students leave with uh, certain skill sets that make them marketable in the education space. And so this Apple certification is a course semester long kind of achievement that they would go through to receive. And it's one way to separate them from other teacher candidates that may be applying for jobs. Given COVID and where we are, to be able to add that type of credential to your transcript or be able to show that you have that type of certification could speak volumes and make all the difference in the world between you and another candidate. We're also looking at a technology badge school. We've been studying uh, this type of process with other universities. I believe it's BYU in Utah that we looked at as a model for having a badge school. So what would happen is that students would take a series of technology courses, trainings, modules, and they would be able to receive a certified badge or badge nonetheless uh, to recognize that they have gone above and beyond in the technology space and they have the skill sets to teach classes from a really advanced technological space. And so we're exploring that opportunity, and I look forward to what that bad school could really do for our School of Education. We've also ordered swivel technology for our classrooms. This really came out of the need of COVID. We anticipated 2 or 3 months ago that we may have to not enter schools, that may be the case, that our student teachers and our students who are in field components, anybody that's in a clinical space may not be allowed into schools. So we had, as we anticipated that, we ordered swivel technology to be able to ensure that our students could still get real-time classroom experiences if they could not enter a classroom this fall. Now, as fate would have it, our school districts have allowed us into their buildings, and we still have these swivel technology uh, products that are becoming to us. But what it does allow for us is an extended way to impact classroom learning. So these swivel setups will be placed in classrooms and they will allow us, a student, to see, and from this particular setup that we're in now, a real classroom, and be evaluated. Okay, they can see it, their supervisors can see it, and they'll be able to really have an impact. So even if a student is in a classroom, their supervisors will be able to use Swivel to watch them teach. And even if our students can't enter a classroom, they can still use this Swivel technology to see a classroom and have their meaningful field experiences. So we're really excited about what the technology will be able to do to enhance our School of Education. Our faculty are excited about it. We anticipate having these swivel setups here in the next couple of weeks. We'll get them out into the schools. And again, this will be another way that our students will be able to see real classrooms without necessarily always being in the classroom. The last point here I want to make on technology is we really need to expand our virtual learning capacity. This is not going away. What we've learned through COVID is that you can instruct in a variety of ways. Our faculty and K-12 partners alike are cringing for best practices around teaching online. Um, there are districts in our Indianapolis kind of space that have not yet returned to school yet. The students haven't returned full time. And so the teachers are at home continuing to divide and design lessons online. And so to be able to create virtual learning credentials will be essential for School of Educations moving forward to ensure that students are able to teach effectively in a remote environment. K-12 partnerships. Yeah, this is the first place that I've been that had such a strong relationship with school districts. In case in point, I was very concerned that school districts would not let us back into their buildings this fall because of COVID. Decatur, Perry, and Wayne townships immediately stepped up to the plate this summer and said, "We want your students back." That's a testament to the quality that we produce from the UIndy School of Education and the work that our faculty members do with our partnering districts. Even in the midst of a pandemic and the fact that you could be bringing in college students into your school buildings, that you are not as familiar with, these three districts stood out and said, we still want UIndy School of Education practicing educators in our buildings to help with our students. That speaks volumes to our relationships. And so I'm very proud of the relationships that we have. We have other relationships with school districts that we send our students to, but these stand out because we spend a lot of time in their buildings and they were happy to receive us in the face of a pandemic. We've also developed a clinical partnership academy. Instead of this just being a one-way kind of deal where we send teachers, practicing teachers to schools, they line up with a cooperating teacher, they student teach, they get their credential and they go on with their life. That's been the model that has happened over time. I participated in a model like that. The Clinical Partnership Academy will be a two-way street where not only do we work with the student teaching professional, but we also work with the cooperating teacher to strengthen their abilities to navigate and mentor our teachers. We think that this is a really unique need. The clinical experience is one of the most important experiences that our students get, but oftentimes if you don't do it right, it just becomes a student teacher in a classroom, operating a classroom space and moving out, and there's no consistency between the cooperating teacher and the student teacher alike. And so with our Clinical Partnership Academy that's going to be run by Professor Kate Reinhardt, we look forward to strengthening those relationships between cooperating teachers, the other faculty in that school, our student teachers, and our faculty alike. So it's going to be a really connected effort to make sure that all cylinders are clicking to ensure that that student gets the best experience possible while they're in the school. We want to be able to offer more trainings and professional development for teachers. Now that we know that one of the buzzwords now is virtual learning, right? And how do teachers experience that in a better platform? Once we know as a faculty and as a school of education how we want to have best practices around those areas, we're looking at a graduate program that will look at instructional design and solutions. Those kind of opportunities we want to extend to our partner school districts and allow them into our space so that they can learn the best methods to teach in a virtual environment. One of these days we'll all be back in the classroom and students will be happy and teachers will be happy and we'll get back to a place of normalcy. But there will always be this space to be able to deliver instruction online. Think about the opportunities that school districts could have to work with students remotely outside of class on weekends in the summer in this type of format where they don't necessarily have to be in the classroom. And so the virtual learning space is not temporary. It's not a temporary fix for now because we're in a pandemic. It's more about how do we extend this creativity for the future and what are the best practices and best ways to do that. And so we want to be able to do those things. We also want our faculty to be able to extend makerspace. We have a brilliant brand new makerspace and it's located in Esch Hall in the lower level. It's a fantastic space. We are starting to use it more with our students. So our students again will leave with a skill set of being able to use a makerspace and be able to teach students in a really, really fundamental way about their ability to engage with hands-on experiences, to learn subject matter. Our faculty are engaging with that. That's exciting. And then the other piece, I've got SEL, social emotional learning, to be able to connect with students in a very strategic and relationship way is also going to be important. These are some of the hot topics that you hear around schools of education. What are they doing in the areas of virtual technology? What are they doing to increase hands-on learning and the ability for students to learn in different ways? And how are they engaging students in a social, emotional, connected way? And so we're going to be at the forefront of those opportunities for teachers to come into our space and do these things very well. Inclusion and equity. This is very important to me, and I know it's important to our faculty that we be able to ensure that our candidates are able to do these things very well, to be able to teach students from different backgrounds, bottom line, right? That they're able to see a student for who they are, respect that student, and bring that student to a space that's inclusive and treats that student fairly. We live in a difficult time where judgments are passed on and on by individual, looking at a certain student and making comments about their ability to learn and progress. We don't want our teacher candidates to walk out of our school of education thinking that way. We want them to be able to walk out with the pride of knowing that they are prepared and that they can teach all learners. We want to be able to provide more diverse clinical teaching experiences for our students. Our students, in order to be confident to teach different types of students, they have to do it while they're practicing. That means their field experiences need to be diverse and their student teaching experiences need to be diverse. Okay. We need to look around our courses that we teach and make sure that the diversity topics are being covered, that our students are aware of this. And it's not just a catch-all course that teaches diversity, equity, and inclusion, that is spread across, that is cutting across themes, that our students are reminded of our purpose and the mission that we adopted. And also, I'm excited about the campus approach that we're taking as a University of Indianapolis, that our campus is embracing equity and inclusion in a really particular way. And Dr. Amber Smith and I have had very good conversations around how the School of Education could be a leader for our campus students and be a leader for the campus in this regard. Okay, so now switch gears, or maybe I can pause here before we get into our topic of the day and take a few questions before we delve into something else here. Any questions about what I may have discussed? Okay, well, our topic for today is really looking at how do we move forward, the impact of COVID-19. What what does the landscape higher education look like, and what does the School of Education look like moving forward? And so, uh, when you talk about how our faculty adapted to online teaching formats, I was very confident about the ability of our faculty to be able to teach in an online environment. We were one of the first schools or colleges on the campus to really step up and identify the courses that we could teach online when all of this hit. Our faculty, because we're a school of education, often get some of the nuances around developing students in different ways. We get it as educators. And so when this happened, we had to step right in and say, how am I going to take our face to face course that our students have been used to for part of the semester now and move it into an online teaching environment? And immediately, as we started to entertain what courses could move, my faculty began to say, I can convert it, I can move it. And that was a real testament to the success that we often have in the School of Education and what we're able to do, partly because it surrounds itself around education in general. And our faculty, again, understand as educators, you have to be able to monitor and adjust. And we were able to do that pretty quickly in changing our courses. Not without hiccups, but I will tell you that we learned that staying engaged with students in an online format is critical. Uh, you just can't put courses into a portal and expect students to go in and do the assignments and turn them in a correspondence type of way. Our faculty really deeply engaged in different platforms online to remain connected to the students. And we saw a lot of success in that way in the spring semester. And we're seeing evidence of that in the fall semester. Our students are really engaging in this. I can't say that they're all happy about it. We all wish that we were on campus and having the normal fall semester that we would enjoy at the university. But I will tell you that our faculty are deeply engaged in making sure that our students are connected and they're meeting their obligations as students. So our faculty did really well adapting to the online teaching formats. We were able to give them the resources that they needed, whether it be certain technology, cameras, lighting, uh, tripods, additional resources that they may need to show students different types of virtual learning software, um, avatars, those kinds of things, so students could get as close to a real experience as they could in an online environment. So not only was that support from the School of Education, but it was support that came from the university at large. How will School of Education teacher preparation programs be shaped by COVID-19? That's a very good question. And there's been a lot of conversation around what's next for School of Education. One of the things that I took a few notes here, if you don't mind me looking down, just to kind of to play along what I've scripted. Um, a lot of education programs are controlled by kind of state authority. You have to follow the licensure rules of your state, right? So what we do in Indiana could be quite different than what they do in California or Wyoming or Texas, right? Similar in a lot of ways, but the requirements could be different. And so we pay close attention to what the state of Indiana has dictated for ed prep programs. And I'll say Indiana has been very flexible in terms of what we can do to meet the needs of our students during this time. They've extended the licensure opportunities in terms of what it takes to get a license. Normally, our teachers have pretty strict deadlines in terms of when they graduate and when they have to take an exam and when they have to apply for a license. All those processes have been extended this year so that our teachers have the space to do what they need to do to take the exam and apply for the license. And so that helps us as a school of education not put the full court press on our students to have to do these things in the face of COVID-19. So Indiana has extended some of those things to allow our students to be more flexible and still reach their goals. Um, One of the challenges that happens in schools of education is, again, I go back to my recruitment slide and the numbers that we have, is that we want to be able to increase opportunities, but we want to maintain our quality. Again, we are a professional licensure program. So that means that we expect a certain type of student to come in and meet certain benchmarks. We call them gateways. And so you're admitted into our school of education with a certain GPA and a certain test score, right? That gets you through the first gate. Then there are a series of assessments that you have to do in order to move on to the second gate, right? And then there's finally the student teaching piece that lets you out of the third gate and into your profession. Well, we've been able to extend some of those and change some of our policies a little bit through those gated doors so that our students could have the necessary time to achieve their goals. One thing that was extended was the teacher licensure exam, right? So there's still a requirement to take the teacher licensure exam, but the manner and the time frame in which you do it can be extended during this time. And that's another flexibility piece that the state of Indiana allowed us to do, and our students really appreciated that opportunity to be able to do those things. Um, what we also are finding with those exams, and this is just sort of a tangent, but I'll get back on track here, is that those exams that teachers take don't always prove whether or not a teacher will be effective in the classroom. Okay, it's a necessary evil for teachers to have to take to receive a license. Okay, so we offer the exams as a state requirement, and our teachers have to take them. But it doesn't necessarily prove that they'll be effective in the classroom. What it proves is that they have some level of understanding of their content, which I can agree with it. But there are other ways to assess whether or not a practicing teacher will be effective in the classroom. And we do some of those things. We pay particularly close attention to how they operate in their clinical experiences when they're practicing. We have EdTPA, which is an additional kind of assessment, portfolio assessment that they do. And that often proves that when we see those types of assessments through their clinical experiences, that they're ready to teach, right? And it builds on their ability to be able to do well on the teacher exams, right? My purpose in saying that is that we have a lot of students, particularly from different backgrounds, diverse backgrounds, that struggle with teacher exams, and they want to be teachers, and they would be great teachers. And the teacher exam sort of is a barrier to their success. And I'm saying all to say that that doesn't always prove that a teacher is ready to teach. And we at the University of Indianapolis, in our School of Education, we look at many ways to assess a student, notwithstanding that teacher licensure exam that they must take. Okay. One of the things that is going to be critical as teachers move into classrooms that may not have gotten the experience that the teacher 5 years received, that was in a total face-to-face environment, that got the rigor, that were assessed by university supervisors in a face-to-face environment. What's happening to our teachers now that are not necessarily getting that. How well prepared will they be to go into a classroom, right? What does that look like for our current seniors, right? That are in their senior year is virtually online. Well, some of the things that are coming up that I think are really good and fascinating ideas was, what will our partner school districts do to continue to support novice teachers that come into the classroom? Will there be master teachers in these schools that say, hey, you were in a fantastic school of education at the University of Indianapolis. I know it to be true. I know the folks over there. I know how well prepared you were to the best of their ability. But I also know that you may not have gotten or received what the UIndy candidates received 3 years ago because of the COVID pandemic. So what's interesting is that whether or not school districts would be willing to have these master teachers who are there kind of continue to induct our teachers into the space uh, as they come into school settings, right? You can call it an induction period, if you will. Maybe that first year, that novice teacher is being connected with a highly qualified master teacher who can work with alongside that first year. Because again, as we're doing everything we can as a school of education, we do recognize that we may not be covering everything to the best of our ability because we're just not in the same format that we typically are to do those things very well. So that's one possibility. Uh, the other critical piece is being able to work, and I care deeply about this too, um, working with students with special needs. Probably the group that is struggling the most right now in this environment are the students who are struggling in a face-to-face environment because they were dealing with certain learning deficiencies or special needs, right? So how do we engage that learner and keep them on track as best we can during this COVID-19 period? It's very difficult. It's a challenging topic as teachers in classrooms and in homes that are teaching in this way, how they continue to complete the 504s, which is policy around students that have certain deficiencies in marking those things. How do we continue to be top-notch educators in that platform? And it's very difficult. We have a well-respected special education program component to our elementary program in our school of education. So our elementary students can walk out with a special education kind of certification. Uh, but teaching those students and ensuring that they're still getting a high level of instruction when we know that it's best for them to be in a setting that's intentional, that's face to face, that's individualized instruction. How do we engage them in this format? And that's probably the next step that we need to take as schools of education to say, what about those students? Because they were behind in some ways in terms of how they were to be able to learn the capacity in their learning capacity. How do we help them? Okay. Um, Teacher candidates will have opportunities to teach uh, now more than ever in weekends, tutoring sessions, after school sessions, so on and so forth. And so I think it'll be important that we remind our students that even though they may not have received that face to face kind of clinical experience that they all desired, there will be opportunities to engage with students at their own kind of volunteering expense to do some of these things very well. I get uh, contacted by uh, private schools, public schools, you name it, charter schools around our candidates being able to go out and do some strategic uh, kind of tutoring experiences with kids. And so I think that if that will continue, and we want to be able to offer those experiences to our students. Uh, Again, that goes back to summer school options and being able to teach and build up their capacity to teach and not in a traditional format. One of the selling points of our school of education is that we have students that go into field experiences very early. Our freshman students go out into classrooms. That's wonderful, right? That we can do that very early in their experience. The clinical experiences are going to continue to be a vibrant part of what we do.
We just need to be able to rethink it and be able to do it well in this type of format.